All right, so now I see there is sound and I can see the sound moving. Yay. All right. What do I have to say? I don't know. I don't really know what I really have to say at all. That's not exactly true. So the title of this is How and Why Should I Stay Alive? And then in the description I say um if my life is meaningless, why should I exist? I don't know. That part sounds a little dramatic, but I didn't really feel like trying to really think about what I wanted to say. I wouldn't say that my life is exactly meaningless, but I think I'm at a place now where my targeting has succeeded. The targeting's purpose is to destroy, dismantle, and discredit someone's life, and they have totally done that. Maybe not exactly entirely discredit, but they're on their way of doing of creating that narrative. So, as I've said many times before, I'm a targeted individual, and at this point in my life, I don't have a lot of fight left in me. I just don't have it. I don't have what I once had when I first moved here. When I moved here from California, when I realized I was being targeted or something was happening I didn't understand, because at that time I was open to what friends and family were saying. They were saying, no, that's not happening. You're just tripping. Um, don't focus on it. It's not really happening. You must be delusional, essentially. And so I was willing to say, no, this isn't happening. I'm just stressed and I'm thinking that people are following me, but they aren't. Or even if they are, once I leave California, I can start over again and it'll be fine. And it seemed that way for the most part until about 2 months in to me living in Washington. And then I started noticing people acting the same ways, same strange behaviors, lots of innuendos, and then gaslighting. And it started over again. And again, I really got to the point. I got really good at one point at ignoring it and talking myself up about not everybody's involved, which is true. Not everybody is involved in your targeting, but it's just enough people around you to make it seem that way. And then the other part is that I don't really understand everything about targeting because there's a technological or a technology tied to it that is a part of the reason why I think I'm even in this particular program, because there's no way that I'm in some program that lasts 10 years long and they're using all these people to follow me around, and the amount of money that they have to put into each individual target is so much that I don't think that mere torture or revenge or anything like that is the reason why this is happening. I think that I was put on this watch list. They decided that I essentially am under arrest, I guess, because and have no rights. And I'm some kind of experiment to see how I would respond to various stimuli, how long it would take for me to flip out after you have like people following you and sabotaging you and breaking into your apartment, or let's not say breaking in, but entering your apartment when you're not here and damaging items, tampering with your food, just to see how long it would take for someone to flip out. And then they would be able to put it back on me, right? So if someone keeps following me, they keep intimidating me, making me feel unsafe and unsettled, then eventually someone will lash out. It's not It's not rocket science. And then that will end you in jail. Or someone will completely break down psychologically, which is kind of where I am, and then they'll unalive themselves, or they will hurt someone else, which is not anything I would do. Um, or just break down in general, like, completely break with reality or something. Because, no one, there's limits to probably what the human mind can endure, right? You can't perpetually be in a state of fear. I don't know what, yeah, and everybody's going to react differently to that, right? And I think I've been trying to say for so long, I'm not afraid, but actually I am afraid. I'm not going to lie. I'm not so much afraid. I know that for the most part that these people are instructed to not harm you, because then they will be, then they would be the person that would be accused of harming me, and then they would be um, arrested or accused of it. So that's not what they're looking for. What they're looking for is for you to react to something that they're doing. So then they can create a narrative that you're dangerous or you're a criminal in some way. And so they can either, some of the things I've read or seen about the targeted individual program or the non-investigative subjects program, which I think is what it's technically called, is that you end up unalived, institutionalized, either in prison or in a mental health facility, or homeless and just on the street. And so I don't want to end up in any of those circumstances. And if I had to choose, I'd choose the first one, because I'm not interested in just roaming around on the street, and I'm also not interested in harming anyone else. Um, Most of the people who they push into the targeted individual program that lash out at people end up killing, I'm sure, and I didn't mean to say killing, but whatever, unaliving, unaliving people. Some of those people are innocent people. So the school shootings, the person, Aaron Alexi, Myron Mays went to a college campus and shot some people, and then he was unalived. And then Aaron Alexi went to, it was in Washington actually, that Aaron Alexi went to the Naval Yard and shot up some people. And I'm assuming that some of those people that were harmed um, were innocent. And those two, and then Galvin Long, um, also there was another shooter, and he harmed, I'm sure, some people that were innocent. That meaning innocent, meaning they had nothing to do with the targeting program. They probably weren't the people that pushed him over the edge. So I am at the precipice of how can I save myself, or even if it's worth it. Is it worth it? I mean, all I want to do for one is to get out there that there is this program, and they will put people on the watch list. And the thing about it, because when people talk about it, they say things like innocent civilians on the watch list. In my, if you're on a watch list, let's say, people are supposed to be watching. People aren't supposed to be instigating you into instigating you into committing some kind of crime. And then you might say, well, how are they instigating you into committing a crime? Well, they're instigating you by following you in an overt manner. If you're surveilling someone, you do it without them knowing, right? But this is not how this goes. This is an agitation program. Better, I think that it should be called, more than a surveillance program. Because if someone's stalking you, or a stalking program, it's essentially what it is. It's not, you're just living your life and you have no idea that someone's tapping your phone, or excuse me, or following you. You're well aware because they want you to be aware. And there's various things that they do. And if you are a targeted individual, you know the color coding of cars and the mobbing. I've been trying to make this recording for so long because I'm having problems with my audio. Um, but the one day, and this is right before my first stress induced situation that I had, because since I've been here, I've had two episodes of just I falling apart, essentially, because you get to the point where it's so hard to take. But I was sitting outside talking on the phone to my ex-husband, and my son was sick, and I was so concerned about him because I don't trust anybody anymore. I don't trust the medical institutions. I just don't. And I'm sorry, I don't feel, and especially being targeted, it's so consuming. You don't know what they do to people. I've read things and seen things where your whole family, I'm not saying that some people think your family gets involved and your family is targeting you, and I don't know, maybe I am not so sure. I think they could flip people in some people's family, but some of the people I'm not so sure. But anyway, we're getting in this argument, and I was so concerned about my son, and I'm kind of thinking, why is he arguing with me about this? It doesn't make any sense. I'm just trying to, he got really, what do you call, condescending with me. And I was just like, look, I'm just concerned about my son's health. That's all I'm saying to you. Um, then I noticed as I was sitting outside, it was just a regular Saturday afternoon. People come in here and there, and then all of a sudden there was a swarm of cars and swarm of people just walking up and down the street. And if you're targeted, this feeling, and it was just so absolutely bizarre, and overwhelming, because who wants to be swarmed with people? I mean, it's like you're being pinned in somewhere, right? And that's essentially kind of what my life is anytime I go outside. It'll start out like that, and then all of a sudden people come out of the woodwork. And people are free to go everywhere, wherever they would like to go. But it's just, the thing is that it's the amount of people, and it's the frequency of these things happening, right? Um, that may happen once or twice, a few, but it's not something that every time you go outside, something to that degree happens to you. It's not something that actually happens. It's, the thing is that you're always supposed to know that you're being watched every single time you leave your apartment or your dwelling or whatever. So that's just one example. There's many others I could give. Um, but after a while of living your life like that, under constant surveillance and constant intimidation and sabotage. So, when I was working, things that they would sabotage me. They would do things like, they would have noise campaigns at my job. They would have those leaf blowers right outside my. And when you say these things, I know that they sound like, oh, that's not a big deal, but if you can think about what a leaf blower is like, right outside the classroom, pumping those gas fumes into my classroom. And this happened on more than 3 occasions. And so after a while of complaining and saying, would you do it at a different time? You start to feel that actually you're being targeted. And, it doesn't make a lot of sense, um, to use something like that at a school when children are trying to learn. They denied my student services. So they had students that had reading services. They had been already tested, and they had already been, time slots had already been made. And then the person who was supposed to come in and do the reading would not be there for like 15, 20 days out of the school year. I mean, it was ridiculous. During state testing, I was one of the coordinators, and basically they didn't listen to me. They didn't take any of my scheduling. I did the schedule like 3 or 4 times. I finally got it to where it was a good place, and they couldn't say, "Oh no, we can't use it." And they were like, "Well, do we really need the time? Do we really need that much time?" And then at the end, there were like about 5 kids that didn't get their state tests done because of it, because they ran out of time essentially. And if they had just allotted the amount of time that they were supposed to, anyway. So, and not to mention, I was just being, they would, part of targeting is for them to come and do things to you, and then, it's always a plausible deniability. So they'd be in my presence and they'd say things that were subliminal. And if I were to say something, they were like, "Oh no, I mean, we didn't mean you, or we weren't talking to you," but it was clear they were talking to me, those kinds of things. And so unless, someone blatantly comes out and says something racial, or say something completely like, "You're stupid and we don't want you here anymore." I mean, basically they have to come off and say something like that, then you really have no recourse, for being workplace bullied. So I couldn't take it anymore. And long story short, I stopped going. And, I feel that it's not even feel, I know for a fact I was bullied out of that employment. And I just fell into the trap and I let it happen. And I should have just kept going. I should have kept going unless my legs were broken, and that, I'm not saying that I was complete. I'm psychological torture and psychological bullying are not okay, and I'm not going to make excuses for that. But there is no, being the person that I am, and the ancestry that I have. I know that these kinds of things happen to people, and far worse, and people still made it through. And I kick myself for not being strong enough to just put up with it. And the way I handled it isn't the way that I should have. But it shouldn't have happened to me, and it was illegal. And I know that. You're not supposed to conspire to kick someone out of their employment. It's the wrong thing to do, and I know it's illegal. But what you know and what you can prove are two different things. So here we are, and I've been trying to gather the motivation to start again, but I haven't had much success. There's no way. Anytime I leave, then I am followed, and they won't say anything. And that's the thing, because then people will be like, "Well, if they're not saying anything or doing anything, then what? Why do you feel that it's a problem?" And I think that's a fair question. The thing is that they do say something eventually, and they do something eventually, and you don't have to do anything. So another example was, this is the last time I just kind of fell off and I couldn't take it anymore. I went to the rainforest. There's a temperate rainforest in Washington, and I stayed at a hotel. And then at the end, and then one of the things I noticed while staying at the hotel, and of course it was a stalking and the this and the that, but one of the things that I noticed while I was staying there is that if I would even, there were the sheets, something was wrong with the sheets. And I said, hey, these sheets are dirty. Will you take the sheets off? We need new sheets. And then they gave me new sheets. But even if I would just put my hand on the sheet, like just touch it, it got some weird stain. And I don't know what that was. It wasn't me. It wasn't like I was dirty. There was nothing. But then at the time, God, I knew the second time that when they gave me the sheets that it wasn't me. It wasn't the sheets that they, I mean, it was the sheets, and they were purposely giving me sheets that had some kind of substance on them that if you touch them, they immediately got dirty. I don't, and I know it sounds bizarre. It sounds like it couldn't be true, but it was. So long story short, when we left the hotel, and I didn't see this email until like a week ago, but they sent me an email saying, you destroyed the room and the sheets were trashed, and we don't ever want you to come back here again, and you spilled wine on the bed. And the thing was is that the sheets had nothing to do with me. The spilled wine, I don't believe that was true, even a little bit. But even if it was true, you mean to tell me that because someone spilled wine on the bed and that the sheets were dirty, that you now have decided that they can never come back to the hotel? That is not a real thing. I'm assuming that that happens all the time. I mean, it's not like any windows were broken or anything. They were really trying to, and that's how these things happen. They start to discredit you, or have some smear campaign that, oh, every time she comes to the hotel, she thrashes it. Anyway, um, not even sure why I told that part of the story, but I'm just saying this is just, these are examples of things that happen to you and you're not doing anything. Like, I absolutely, the sheets were their responsibility. I don't know how the sheets got like that. It got so bad that I just wouldn't even sleep on the sheets. I just laid on top of the bed because I didn't want to lay on the sheets because anytime you touch them, they got a stain. Like, you would just sit down and then something would get on them, and it was clear it was not coming from you. It was just your interaction with the sheet, which is so bizarre, but it was happening. I can tell you that. And that's the thing about being targeted. It's so intricate and it's so hard to prove, because even as I'm talking about the whole sheet situation, I'm thinking to myself, well, if I were to tell someone told that to me, I would say, oh, well, maybe your clothes were dirty, or maybe your hands were dirty. Um, I would immediately go to those places where, because someone giving you sheets that are intentionally treated with something to make it look like you made them dirty just sounds bizarre and sounds like nothing, something no one would do. But I'm telling you, it absolutely is. And that's the thing about targeting. It's so hard to prove it. It's so hard to prove anything that is being done. Because when you start to explain it, you just seem like you're crazy. You seem like you're making up things that don't make sense. Or the other thing they like to say is like, you're not taking accountability. You messed up those sheets. So you did it and you just need to admit it. And it's like, actually, no, I didn't do it. When I go and stay in hotels, I make a point to try and keep them as decent as I can. I don't go overboard because they actually do have people that work there. So, I mean, but I don't go out of my way to thrash the place. So that's that. Um But can you imagine? It's like anytime I go anywhere, it's kind of the same thing. Somehow, some way, your vacation, where you're going, is you're met with something that is just to make you feel uncomfortable, sabotage. Can you imagine living a life like that? Can you imagine you're just every day of your life is the worst day of your life? And it's not the worst day because I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen. When I say the worst day, I mean, a typical bad day, like, oh, my car won't start. Or, and again, these are things that have happened to me and it happened to a million people. But um, one of the things that starts to happen when you're targeted is those kind of things start to happen to you. And you like, I wonder why that's happening. Like, I went through a period before I knew I was targeted that my battery was just being drained, and I was like, what's going on with my battery? Yeah, it's a difficult life to live and damn near impossible. And that's why I still pose the question, how and why should I keep living? If I were just to end it all, why would it why would it matter? Why what difference does it make? I know I don't my kids love me. So and I doubt highly that my kids are, like I said, some people believe that family members are involved in your targeting. And if they are, I know it's not knowingly. Um and I think the only reason I wouldn't kill myself is because I don't want them to feel that that is a way to deal with life's difficulties. And again, this targeting program is not just about me. It's not about killing me. I mean, or destroying me. If you want to take it from a more new world order point of view, if I kill myself, someone in my family is more likely to kill themselves. And if you're trying to reduce the population, you know, I mean, and that's getting to the point where, okay, now that's really a conspiratorial kind of way of thinking. And I you know, asked me 15, 20 years ago about conspiracies, or even let's say 12 years ago, I would be like, yeah, I don't know. And I don't care. I don't care about the government and their secret conspiracies. Like, it doesn't affect my day to day life, but oh, yes, it does. If you get on a watch list or a slow kill list. So, why and how should I keep living my life? So, the first thing I said, the why is because I don't want to be that person in the family that does that, because you end up not really, you hurt yourself, obviously, because then you're unalived. But hurting people that you do love and care about, as much as the people who participate in this think that my life doesn't matter to anyone, it does matter to some people. So, um, so that's one reason why. Another reason why is that I don't think that I fulfilled my life purpose, unless my life purpose is to say, well, look, people, there is a program called the Targeted Individual Program, or either non investigative subjects program, that is illegal, highly illegal, and leads to the not only the deaths of the person that is on the list, but to probably countless other people that are affected by it. So when the people flip out and the mass shootings happen, Innocent people are killed. We really, those things that happen, and we really just forget them. It just goes away. We think about the mass shooting for about 3 days or so, and then we go on about our lives and no one really cares. And we can see the increase in mass shootings over the years since 9/11, and we just don't think about it much. So there's that. I would hope to get my story out and then people would believe, like, hey, this person actually is targeted. This person actually ended her life because of the incessant following, bullying, and sabotage. Few people can live their lives like that. So that's one reason to do it. And it also could be a reason not to end my life. Because maybe if I stay alive, maybe I can be some kind of activist or get the word out. I don't know. It seems unlikely because I'm pretty isolated and no one around me. I'm actually surrounded by enemies. So no one around me is going to really help. So I'm not sure how I'm going to get the word out or how I'm going to bounce back from this particular situation. And the how, I don't know. That's a question I'll pose to anyone that hears this. How might I do it? How might I save myself? Or why or why shouldn't I save myself? Or can I save myself?